Charlie Sheen, the man who made America laugh for over a decade with 2.5 Men, and the first actor in television history to earn $18 million per episode. He lived in a sprawling 9,000-square-foot mansion in Beverly Hills, complete with a private movie theater and balconies overlooking the sweeping skyline of Los Angeles. But behind those years of extraordinary success came the kind of turmoil no one could have predicted, being fired from the very show that made him a household name, and later standing before national television to publicly acknowledge his HIV diagnosis. What stands out, however, is not the scandal, but how he chose to face it all and begin rewriting his own life story. Join us as we explore the luxurious, turbulent, and often surprising life of Charlie Sheen, a man who was once one of the most beloved and also one of the most misunderstood figures in American television history. If you enjoy videos like this, don't forget to like and leave a comment below. It helps us more than you know. You'll never be as good as he is. A throwaway comment, perhaps, but it sank deep into the mind of a young Carlos who would one day become known as Charlie Sheen, like a cold, sharp needle. He was just 10 years old, having been asked to leave a film set after he had quietly stepped up to read one of his father's lines. "You can't play here?" the director said, not even looking back. No one shouted at him, but no one defended him either. It was just him standing alone under the bright lights, surrounded by the brutal indifference of the adult world. Carlos grew up in New York in a family of artists, not destitute, but never truly comfortable either. His father, Martin Sheen, was an actor still struggling to make a name for himself. His mother, Janet, was a quiet, introspective artist. In their crowded household, Carlos's name often seemed to be the one overlooked. His older brother Emilio was the one with expectations placed on him, the one encouraged and guided Carlos. He was quick-witted but aimless, passionate but prone to making a mess of things. He became quiet, not from shyness, but from the simple fact that no one was really listening. At school, he stood out for his rebellious streak, but behind the skipped classes were handwritten screenplays, a Super 8 camera, and short films he made with his friends, Rob Lowe, Sean Penn. Through that tiny lens, he was the director, the actor, the one in control of a world where no one could push him away. But reality was far less forgiving. Just weeks before high school graduation, Carlos was expelled, too many absences, grades too low. That night, he tore up the script for his latest short film and threw it into the trash. No tears, no words, just silence. Then, one night, he sat watching Apocalypse. Now the film that would make his father a legend, the flickering screen cast pale light over his teenage face. And inside, something caught fire. Not envy, a vow. One day I'll step into that world, not as someone's shadow under a different name, standing in my own light. That was the night Carlos disappeared, and Charlie Sheen began to take shape. The first role didn't bring me money, but it gave me something more important, the belief that I could stand on my own. That was how Charlie Sheen felt, walking off the set of Red Dawn in 1984. It was only a supporting role. The pay was modest, but for the first time, he felt chosen not because of the Estevez name, but because of his own effort. After leaving high school without a diploma, Charlie didn't go back to finish. Instead, he chose a road few dared to follow to become a working actor, not as Martin Sheen's son, not living in anyone's shadow, but telling his own story. The 1980s were a time of change in America. Families were installing VCRs, shopping malls where booming synth-pop music filled the airwaves, and a new wave of action films reshaped Hollywood. The American dream seemed alive, but it also tested the perseverance of those trying to make it. While many opted for safer careers, Charlie pounded the pavement, showing up to every audition with his sides carefully marked, memorizing every line. During this time, he landed a few small roles in films like Lucas, 1986, The Wraith, 1986, and Young Guns, 1988. He wasn't a leading man yet, but each role was a small step forward, much like an entrepreneur building something from scratch, slowly, steadily, never letting an opportunity slip away. The major turning point came in 1986 when Charlie was cast as Chris Taylor in Oliver Stone's war epic Platoon. The role demanded depth, a young soldier thrust into the brutality of war, losing his innocence and his belief in everything he once knew. Some doubted whether Charlie had the emotional range for such a role, but the director believed, and Charlie did not disappoint. Filming took place in the harsh conditions of the Philippine jungle, where mud monsoon rains and the relentless buzz of insects became part of the experience. Charlie never complained. He learned his lines, meticulously trained physically to keep up with the grueling schedule, and often sat alone between takes, not for show, but because he was living inside the world of his character. When Platoon premiered, it didn't just win the Oscar for Best Picture, it marked the arrival of a new Charlie Sheen, steadier, more mature, and finally recognized by Hollywood as a serious actor. Success led to more success. In 1987, Charlie starred alongside Michael Douglas in Wall Street, a film that would earn Douglas an Academy Award. By then, Charlie was no longer auditioning. Directors sought him out. Studios wanted his name on their posters. Leading roles came along with long-term contracts and paychecks large enough for him to buy his first apartment in West Hollywood. In an interview later that decade, Charlie once said, "I know I didn't move as fast as some others, but every time I step onto a set, I bring a sense of gratitude. I spent a long time standing on the outside, looking in, and now I don't want to waste a single second." Charlie didn't come from elite acting schools. He didn't have classical stage training. What he had was instinct and resilience, things forged only through real challenges. He had been doubted, overlooked, and passed by, but he never let it blur his original goal. Compared to others of his generation, some found quicker paths to fame, some smoother roads. But Charlie Sheen became something different, a symbol of persistence, a man who kept moving forward even when the way wasn't paved in red carpet. And just a few short years after quietly leaving high school, he stood at the center of major film premieres in roles that millions would remember. A journey not marked by noise, but by steady determination, and a journey well earned. Not everyone who becomes famous leaves a lasting mark, but some faces become woven into the collective memory, and Charlie Sheen is one of them. In the early 2000s, among the countless familiar faces on American television, Charlie Sheen stood out as a new kind of icon, not just for his acting, but for a style and presence all his own. When he took on the role of Charlie Harper in 2.5 Men, he didn't just play the character, he became him, a wealthy, carefree bachelor living in a Malibu beach house. This image entered American pop culture every Monday night on CBS and quickly became a fixture. The show drew up to 15 million viewers per episode, and Charlie Sheen became one of the most talked about names on television. With his sharp delivery, natural expressions, and impeccable comedic timing, he earned multiple Emmy nominations, won a Golden Globe for Spin City, and became the highest-paid actor on television, earning up to $18 million per episode by 2010. But Charlie's success wasn't only measured in dollars, it was public recognition. From the young father in Spin City to the eccentric pilot in Hot Shots to the lovable rogue uncle in 2.5 Men, every role left behind a smile, a memorable line, something audiences carried with them long after the screen went dark. Fame brought more than just fortune, it brought space to breathe. At the height of his career, Charlie began shaping a life that mirrored his success. One of his biggest moves was purchasing a mansion in Mulholland Estates, the gated Beverly Hills community reserved for those who had truly made it. Charlie bought the estate in 2006 for about $7.2 million, and during the market's peak, the home's value was estimated at nearly $10 million, not just because of its location, but because of the story behind its owner. Spanning over 9,000 square feet, the home featured 7 bedrooms, a resort-style swimming pool, a private movie theater, and a dedicated poker room. But perhaps its most remarkable feature was the second-story balcony, where Charlie would often stand for hours, looking out over the city bathed in golden light. To him, it wasn't just a place to live. It was a place that captured the long journey from the shadows into the light. If his career brought him to Hollywood's highest tiers, then cars were how Charlie enjoyed each step of the journey. He didn't collect for show, nor did he follow trends. Charlie chose his cars the way he chose his roles. They had to reflect who he truly was. His black Mercedes-Benz S550 was his first pick during the peak of 2.5 Men elegant, but understated, the S-Class sedan was seen as a symbol of quiet power, and Charlie customized his personally from a hand-finished wood steering wheel to warm cream leather seats to a fine-tuned Bose system playing classic jazz. Each morning, the car wasn't just a vehicle, but a rolling sanctuary designed for him alone. Charlie also owned a silver Porsche 911 Carrera S, renowned for balancing performance with refined design. Rarely seen at major events, this Porsche became his trusted companion along California's coastal highways, often on quiet Sunday mornings when the city was still asleep. Unlike the usual Hollywood image of roaring supercars on red carpets, Charlie didn't drive to impress. He drove to find stillness. Each car, each road, each solitary morning drive was a space of quiet in a life filled with noise. In the way Charlie chose his vehicles, there was careful selection, lived experience, and above all, a sense of privacy that didn't need an audience to feel valuable. Less showy than his home and more personal than his cars, Charlie's watches remained his most private treasures, silent markers of milestones the press never recorded. The timepiece most associated with him is the solid gold Rolex Day Date. President, a symbol of achievement among American business and entertainment elites. Crafted with a mother-of-pearl dial, diamond bezel, and the signature President bracelet, it reflected a grounded confidence without being ostentatious. In an interview, Charlie once said quietly, "I didn't buy it to tell time I bought it, to remind myself of the things I've overcome." Beyond the Rolex, his collection was said to include a Patek Philippe Calatrava, an Audemars Piguet Royal Oak, and several rare vintage models. A watchmaker close to Charlie once shared, "Every piece he owns marks a moment finishing a significant film, the birth of his first child a year when he kept a promise to himself." Unlike many celebrities, Charlie never flaunted his watches on social media or at lavish parties. Most people never even knew what he owned, because for him, the true value wasn't in the display, but in the meaning behind each piece. Amid Hollywood's blinding lights, few realize that Charlie Sheen spent most weekends in quiet solitude, not to escape, but to nurture a deeper part of himself, the man who appreciated life, who knew when to pause. Inside his luxurious Mulholland Estates home, he set aside a private wine cellar housing over 200 bottles of fine wine and rare whiskey. Among them Macallan 25-year-old Scotch and rare Burgundy vintages from France, not to be shown off, but to be savored on rare, meaningful occasions. For Charlie, a fine wine wasn't meant for a crowd. It was meant for the right moment with the right person. Alongside his wine collection, Charlie developed a passion for fine cigars, a habit he had maintained since the late 1990s. His favorite, the Cohiba Bihaque from Cuba, famously known as the King of Cigars. Each one could cost hundreds of dollars, but for Charlie, it wasn't a symbol of luxury. It was a personal ritual. An afternoon spent in the backyard, soft jazz playing, savoring a perfectly rolled cigar. Those were the moments when the noise of the outside world disappeared. Even his clothing reflected that philosophy. Far from the dazzling tuxedos of red carpets, Charlie preferred linen shirts, khaki trousers, and classic leather shoes in a deep mahogany shade. He didn't chase fashion trends. For Charlie, comfort was the truest luxury, and it showed in every crisp fold of his shirt, every well-cared-for shoe nearly free of scuffs. But perhaps the most remarkable thing about Charlie Sheen's lifestyle wasn't in the objects he owned. It was in how he used his time. Those close to him say he often spent Sunday afternoons playing chess with his children or watching old films starring his father, Martin Sheen. There was a time he quietly played Badlands again, whispering, "I used to stand outside looking in. Now I understand everything inside." A man who once lived in the center of fame and excess, but still preserved quiet spaces for reflection that is more than luxury, that is strength. He once appeared on television every Monday night, but then, in just a single season, the name Charlie Sheen faded, replaced by questions and a long-telling silence. In 2011, at the very height of 2.5 Men's success, Charlie Sheen departed the show following a series of controversial public interviews. Many were surprised, some were disappointed. But in the media landscape of that time, when social media had begun to shape public opinion, every word could be isolated, magnified, and spread faster than ever before. The end of his contract put his career on pause, but what mattered more was the way Charlie chose to respond. No public attacks, no casting of blame, just a quiet withdrawal to focus on healing. He devoted more time to his family, began serious therapy, cut back on parties, and approached his battle with alcohol addiction with newfound commitment. It was during this period that Charlie spent much of his time writing. According to his father, Martin Sheen, Charlie often sat alone in a small home office recording memories as a way to better understand himself, not to justify, but to preserve something meaningful. The most emotional turning point came in 2015 when Charlie appeared on national television and publicly revealed that he was living with HIV. It was a decision made with remarkable calm, not seeking pity, not avoiding the truth, but standing as a man, choosing to speak plainly to end speculation and to encourage others to live with greater responsibility. After that announcement, Charlie began working with health organizations, supporting campaigns to raise awareness about HIV/AIDS, becoming one of the few public figures to face such a personal challenge, openly and without concealment. Public reaction was mixed, but throughout it all there was a consistent thread of respect for the courage it took. In the years that followed, Charlie quietly stepped away from major events and moved from Beverly Hills to a quieter life in Malibu. Gone were the grand mansions, the glittering parties. But in that stillness, something deeper emerged, something no headline could explain. Scandals may interrupt a career, but for Charlie Sheen, they could never extinguish a strong spirit, nor stop a man from learning to walk forward again with greater calm and depth. A man once known for his comedic roles on television ultimately left his greatest mark through the courage to speak the truth and to live it. In 2015, Charlie Sheen publicly revealed that he was living with HIV. It was a turning point not only in his personal life, but also in how society viewed the illness. He didn't hide, he didn't blame. Instead, he chose to share his story, encouraging people to live responsibly, to get regular health checkups, and to treat those living with the condition with kindness and dignity. Following his public announcement, Charlie quietly became involved in community health initiatives. Without fanfare, he donated to causes, appeared at outreach programs, and supported free testing and counseling services for those in need. He never called it a duty, he simply called it the right thing to do. Beyond his social efforts, Charlie also turned to writing a memoir, reflecting on his life and the lessons he learned along the way. According to his father, Martin Sheen, the book was handwritten quietly without spectacle. Not to defend himself, but to leave behind something genuine for his family, his children, and perhaps for himself. Many fans still remember Charlie from those years in the early 2000s when he filled homes with laughter every weeknight. But today, what many recall most is something deeper: the resilience of a man who stumbled but never chose to give up. Gone are the grand mansions and the bright studio lights. Charlie now lives quietly by the ocean, spending his days with his children and embracing the simple things. But the legacy he leaves behind is not measured in material wealth. It's found in the way he turned hardship into action and personal pain into empathy for others. Legacy isn't always built in the brightest moments. Sometimes it's defined by how we rise after we thought we couldn't. For Charlie Sheen, it is this quiet resilience that remains his most lasting and admirable legacy.